All right, so now that we're done practicing, we're gonna start to actually paint. Now, like, remember what I said? Start by taping your edges down. Have somebody help you to keep it nice and straight, because it's kind of nice that when you're done, that you can create a nice white border like this one has. It may bleed out. We call this bleeding when the watercolor runs underneath, but if it does that, that's okay. We can always try to lighten that a little bit. And I don't like to throw these away. I like to use these extra papers, my practice papers, to make a card out of them or a bookmark. All right. If you don't have tape, another way you can do this is you can kind of get your paper wet just with plain water, like this. Get it wet, and then flip it over. So if you don't have tape, you can do this too with watercolor paper. This doesn't work as great with like computer paper, but it works great with watercolor paper. Get it wet, flip it over. Do you see how it's curling on the edges? Now, if I get it wet again, it will lay down flat. What's happening is the paper has little fibers in it that loosen up or tighten up. And so I'm trying to now get my paper to lay down and relax so we can start to paint. Before I start though, I want to make a horizon line with my pencil. So I'm going to make a line, a wavy line that goes towards the bottom of my paper like this. And so this is where the sky is going to meet the earth. And this is the line that the earth is. I'm going to start with my sky, and I have my paper nice and wet. See how nice it's laying down now? And see how it's kind of messy? So it's good to do this at a table. And I'm using a tablecloth, but it'd probably be better if you didn't use a tablecloth because you would get it wet and dirty. So just a regular table, okay? Now I'm going to start with my blue again. Do you remember that bright blue that we used before? Look at that. It is such a pretty blue. I like that for my sky. Oh no, guess what? I forgot to put my moon in. I need to stop. What am I going to use for my moon? I think I'm going to take my clean water cup and trace around it. Like that. And I made a little circle. I could even leave that sitting on there for right now, just to help me remind myself not to get the blue paint underneath there. I'm adding more blue. Oh, look at that, when it just runs like that. I like that. Go underneath and keep bringing that down to about there. Then I'm going to rinse my brush and I'm going to put some purple. See how dirty my water is getting? I'm going to use some purple paint and I'll put some purple right down here and mix that with my blue to my horizon line. And back and forth now to blend my two colors together. Remember when we practiced that on our practice sheet? But I want my sky to be really dark, to be night sky. So I'm going to dip my brush now into some of that blackish blue color. Ooh, that looks like a night sky. A good sky color for when it's getting really dark outside. I don't need to put that on top everywhere, just in a few spots towards the top of my paper, and maybe a little bit more blue, and maybe just a streak of purple here and there to make my sky more interesting. But I want my sky to be dark, right? Because it's a night sky that we're making with the moonlight. Okay, and this kind of gives the glow of after a sunset with that purplish color down below, where it's a late evening sky. I like that. Now I'm going to rinse my brush out, and while I'm getting my paints are sitting there to dry, I'm going to take a little bit of salt. Remember how we did that on our practice one? We're just going to use a little bit of salt and sprinkle that onto our sky. If you have a salt shaker, you can just shake the salt shaker. That would be easier than trying to pinch it with your fingers. There we go. We'll let that sit. Now while that's sitting, I'm going to remove my clean water cup. Ooh, look at that. Look what's happening. Did you expect that to happen? I didn't. But I had so much water sitting right next to the edge of my cup that it's running inside that circle. And I want my moon to be brighter than my sky, so I have two ways that I can fix that. First, I can just use some water and just kind of lighten it. And then I can use a paper towel and kind of fold my paper towel up and kind of blot it. This is called blotting. And look how it takes off some of that color. Now I can leave my moon being more white like that, or I can make it a yellow moon. I think I'm going to make it kind of a yellow moon. So I'm going to take a little bit of yellow and put on there. Now be careful, because when you add yellow to blue, do you know what color you're going to get? Anybody know? It sometimes turns kind of green. Do you see that little bit of green coming in there? So again, I might blot those edges again, especially where the blue is, so that my blue doesn't make my moon get all green. Okay, and now I'm going to rinse out my brush. I'm going to come back with a little bit of red. Now it might get too dark. Oop, it's a really dark red, so I'm just using a little bit, and then I'm going to spread that out with some water on my moon. Just spreading it out. See how I'm just using my little brush here? I'm not using the big brush. And I might come back and add a little more yellow to it, so I get more of that orange moon that first rises from the sunset. There we go. And again, I can blot it if I want it lighter. Okay. Now, look what's happening in my salt. It's making little snowflakes. Do you see that? That's going to be fun to see how that turns out. But this still has to dry. So now I'm going to work on my earth, where the land meets the sky. So this line here, remember, was called the horizon line. This time I'm going to start with my black, but my black is kind of, like I said, a bluish black color. It's not a real dark black. And that's okay, because I don't want it to be a dark, dark black. Most people who work with watercolor don't like to use black. Did you know that? And now what I'm doing is called a dry brush technique. Do you remember me talking about the wet on wet with the sky? Now I'm just putting wet watercolor paint, on top of my dry paper, so I can control it better. I don't want it to go all up into my sky. And I can use the tray black. So I use my liquid, or I can use this one. This one will work too, the same way. So they both work. All right, so there is my earth. Next thing I'll do is start my trees. Again, I'm going to start with the black, and I'm going to make a line. And I'm going to make a line that goes from here to my horizon line, or even past that a little bit. Then I'm going to make another one. This one is going to go even onto my moon and down here. And one more way up here in the sky, coming all the way down. They look like kind of silly trees right now. They need branches, don't they? So I'm going to make an evergreen tree. So I'm going to make little tiny lines going out like this. It's kind of, an evergreen is like what we call it, sometimes a Christmas tree. There's different types of trees that are evergreens, and evergreen means that the branches stay green all winter. It's forever green, right? Do you see how I'm going back and forth and making all my little branches for my tree? And I'm going to even go all the way down. Maybe I'll even need a little bit more paint to make it darker down here. I'm going to do it all the way to the bottom so it looks like an evergreen tree. And I'm going to do that to each one, going back and forth, making all of my little branches. There's 2 trees. Let's make a third. This is going to have a little bit bigger branches because it's a bigger tree. And I'm just going back and forth all the way down to the bottom of my tree trunk. And then I can use my little markers. Remember I talked about using markers? If I want the little tiny branches where you can see the little pine needles, I can use a dark green. Or sometimes if I don't have a dark green, I'll just even use another color and just kind of pull on the wet paint to make my little branches come out more. Sometimes it's easier to control where the paint is going and what the shape is going to look like if you can use a little bit of marker with it. Oh, I like how these trees are turning out. They look really nice, I think, in my night sky. And if I want, I can even add a little bit of salt to my trees when my paint is wet, and then it will kind of create it look like snow on my trees too. So I'm going to sprinkle a little bit of salt right on my trees. And maybe even a little bit down to my ground here too, just a little bit. Okay. Then I just have to let that sit and wait to dry. But there's one more thing I need to put on here, and that is my signature. A signature is your name, and you write your name on the front of your artwork, and it's usually kind of small right here on the bottom. So I'm going to write my name. It might be kind of hard to see, especially on the camera, but my name is Tamara Eastfeld. And so I'm writing my name out, and I'm going to put a 20 behind it because that's right now when I've worked on this. That's the year. It was 2020. If it's 2021 when you work on yours, then you would write a 21. And that doesn't show up very good. So I may come back over my lines with a pen and write my name again. That is called my signature, where somebody looks at my artwork and they know that I made it. And then right here was the 2020. There we go. And that is our painting. Now, one more thing. Don't forget to clean up your mess. So you can take this and wash it in the sink. You can let this dry before you close the lid. Make sure you take your dirty paint brushes. Look how much dirt, or not dirt, but paint is still in my brush. So I will rinse that out good in my clean water and my dirty water first, and then my clean water to make sure my brush is clean before I put it back. And then I need to dump my dirty water into the sink and put away my salt and all my other supplies. I hope you had a good time. Thanks for joining me. See you soon.